Please rewind this cassette.
Oh, hi. Nice to see you there. This is Pat, and I'm going to review Quentin Tarantino's new joint, or shall I say Quentin motherfucking Tarantino, man, and his new movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, even though it's been out for like a fucking month or something. Oh, you know, I'm pretty famous now for my delayed reviews. I think Game of Thrones Part 2 is coming out at some point. I don't know. Terrible Lizard's been editing it for it seems like forever. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's like editing in between like jerk off sessions or something like that, but I respect the man enough to be patient. This might be a new format for the channel. For reviews that I don't want to spend time editing, and I don't want to just put up an image of Pat in front of the video store, and I just don't have time, and the movie's been out a while. I would love to do a review of this movie that actually has like footage from the film, and I can use those images to kind of talk about to reinforce my points and so on. But that's not really where we're at. So the new format in the television and kind of in the apartment here, and I just kind of go off the cuff. And I saw this 2 weeks ago. So this review is kind of going off memory. I don't actually remember every little detail, but I remember it pretty well for the most part. So just right out of the gate, this is my favorite Tarantino film since Jackie Brown, possibly. I'm not 100% sure. I know I like it more than Inglourious Bastards, and I like it more than Django. I don't know if I like it more than Hateful Eight, which, despite being critically one of his weakest reviewed films, is actually the one that I thought was his best in a long time. This film I need to rewatch a few more times. I think it's going to hold up to repeat viewings, but I did love it on initial watch, and I do think, in many ways, it's his most artistic film, or at least his most rewarding film to go back to in a long time. It's also his sweetest film. That's the biggest surprise about this movie, is that it's his most sentimental and affectionate film. It's his least violent film for the majority of its runtime. There's a lot of scenes that I would call cute, especially one with a little girl that is very reminiscent of the Coen brothers' True Grit. It's about friendship, it's about loyalty, it's about the loss of innocence in not only the 60s, but just in general, how we sort of lost something magical about movies, and how culture changed so much as harsh reality kept coming in to the forefront, and we wanted to make movies or music and talk about those things, and we kind of forgot about the fantasy, which maybe Hollywood was never what we thought it was. Maybe the fantasy was never real. And now that we're all kind of dealing with that in a post-Weinstein era and a Me Too era, this was an appropriate movie for Tarantino to make, and a movie that only Tarantino could make. And that's something that's very unique to him. I don't think any first-time filmmaker would have the balls to do things that he does in this movie, nor would I think a first-time filmmaker would be willing to have a commentary like this, where what he's talking about, in some ways, the white male lead actor movie star being a relic to a new way of Hollywood, and a Hollywood filled more with special effects, a Hollywood more built around streaming and TV stars and movie stars not really being any different. It's a sad film. In many ways, it has a sense of melancholy through it. It's his saddest movie, I think, in a lot of ways, and I think he probably has 5 hours of footage on this thing, and we're only seeing about the 2 hours and 40-minute cut that he could put together, because I think he actually just because this was a $90 million movie. Now, watching it, to me, this looked like a movie that could have cost $50 million. So I'm assuming a big chunk of the budget went to paying Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, who must have at least got, 10, 15 million apiece. Normally they would get more than that, but I'm sure they took a little bit of a pay cut because it's Tarantino. So this movie follows Rick Dalton, who is a famous TV star who was on a show called Bounty Law, and his best friend and stuntman, Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, who did the stunts for him on that show for years, but is now having a hard time getting work because there's a rumor being spread around that he killed his wife. And we get a weird little flashback scene that kind of gives us this question if he did or not. It's a weird editing thing with this movie. He cuts within things. Like, you'll be watching a scene, and this movie's got this very lived-in quality. It's sort of like a Hal Ashby flick. It also reminds me of Dazed and Confused. It's a hangout movie, as Tarantino would call it. It's a fucking hangout movie, man. Dude. And it's kind of got this deliberate, lived-in pace. It's very similar to Jackie Brown, more so than his other films. But then inside of that, there's these scenes where he goes into a flashback or an alternate history or something like that, and then the movie keeps cutting back and forth. That's one of my only criticisms. I'm not sure if I liked this editing technique. It's a film, for the most part, that's devoid of a lot of cutting and editing. Scenes really play out, shots play out for a long time. But for some reason, I think maybe he thought to reinforce some of the characters' motivations and the psychology of these people and getting to know them better. We do have a lot of these, like, let's cut into this movie that Rick was in. Let's look at him if he was in The Great Escape, which Tarantino said looks so good that he hopes people someone doesn't remake Casablanca with George Clooney. But if you asked him to do that, he would probably reject your hypothesis. Tarantino's just a goddamn meme generator, isn't he? I'm shutting your butt down. I mean, who thinks to say that? I'm shutting your butt down. Genius. Um, the reason I love this movie and why I was loving it on initial watch, despite my criticism somewhat with the pacing, I think the Rick Dalton filming the Western scenes as the bad guy goes on way too fucking long. I think there's a good argument to be made that this could be an even better movie if it didn't have the Manson family in it, if it didn't have Charles Manson, if it didn't have Sharon Tate, and it was really just about these two guys hanging out. I mean, one of my favorite scenes in the movie is a scene where Rick Dalton's appearing on an episode of FBI, and him and Cliff just get some beers, sit there and do a commentary for it like an episode of Beavis and Butthead. And it's just amazing. You just want to chill with these two guys, because Brad Pitt is the epitome of cool. He's the fucking Marlboro Man in this goddamn movie. He is Billy Jack, which he actually brought a copy of the Blu-ray of Billy Jack to Tarantino's house, saying, I think there's something in the character here. And Tarantino's like, I have a 35mm print of Billy Jack in my screening room right now to show you. So they were on the same page. It's relaxing. This is a relaxing movie. This is a subtle emotional film that sneaks up on you, and it suits Tarantino. It shows me that he can reinvent himself and make new things and be different. This seems so much more mature than his other works recently. This seems so much more inspired. I love how different it is. This is really nothing like Inglourious Basterds or Django, and I'm so glad, because I thought he was just kind of do that again and repeat himself a little bit. But I mean, the beautiful thing about this movie is that you could tell that he knows the end of his career is coming if he sticks to that 10-movie retirement plan. So you can kind of feel it that he's trying to, at least on some level, make a thesis a bit about his career in Los Angeles. There's a little bit of Pulp Fiction in here because it spans a couple of days in LA. There's a lot of Jackie Brown. There's sequences that will make you think of parts of Django or parts of Inglourious Basterds, in particular that tavern sequence. There's like a 20-minute stretch here at a ranch that's very intense. And then it'll also remind you of other filmmakers and influences that I didn't think Tarantino necessarily had. This, like I said, this was refreshing. And it reminded me of a lot of filmmakers that I love personally and films that I love from the 70s in particular. So basically, Rick lost his job on Bounty Law because he wanted to go have a movie career. He's becoming a has-been, which Al Pacino tells him in the beginning. And a cameo that's nice. It's just Al Pacino's not in the movie very much. I wish he was in it more. Because it's nice to see Al Pacino actually have good fucking dialogue. Let's just hope The Irishman isn't a fucking disaster. Although I have a bad fear it's going to be a disaster. Damn good coffee. Actually, it's kind of cold and not that good, but whatevs. So, what's really cool is that there's an idea with this movie that's brilliant from a structure standpoint and a story standpoint and a thematic one. Is that Rick is a TV cowboy. He plays a TV cowboy. He plays a badass. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing him play this badass in the bounty law parts that we see. We see him on FBI. We see him play a bad guy and chew the scenery up. Which, by the way, this is like Leo's best performance in a long time. This is up there with Wolf of Wall Street and Gilbert Grape. Just that thing that Leo can bring to a movie, almost this patheticness that he has as a character actor. But that's Rick Dalton, but really he's this drunk slob. He's a mess. And Cliff, Brad Pitt's character, he is a cowboy. He is a badass. He is the movie star outside of the industry. He actually gets things done. He doesn't care. He's cool. He's got swagger. And there might even be a little bit of here about the two actors, because I've always thought of Leonardo DiCaprio as a character actor that fell into being a leading man because of Titanic, where Brad Pitt is kind of the epitome of a movie star, the way he talks. I mean, has anyone ever thought about how badass Brad Pitt's voice is? It's so fucking soothing. There's a part where he's talking to Leo and he's like, hell, I like driving you around, Cliff. He just has this fucking... And I'm not talking about the Aldo Ray, like, I want my Nazi scalps. I'm talking about, like, that Fight Club voice. That laugh he has. I'm talking about that fucking sort of southern drawl he brings to things and the way he takes his time to say things. Also, he takes his shirt off in the movie. Brad Pitt still got it. Good looking dude. And because his face has aged so much, it almost gives him like more. It makes him more real and awesome. It reminds me of Matthew McConaughey lost all that weight and then gained back some muscle, and then he played Russ Cole. It makes these pretty boy actors better when they have some damage and scars. It makes it easier to relate to them. I mean, he's just turned into Robert Redford. This film solidifies Brad Pitt as a movie star and as an icon. This single role, this is one of his best roles. Thank God it was Tarantino. You go back thinking about how Brad Pitt was in True Romance. This is fucking beautiful. This is Brad Pitt at his best. He steals the movie. I think Leo's great in this movie. And I think that his scenes are awesome for the most part. They drag a little bit for me in some parts, but I think for the most part they're great. But Tarantino's secret weapon is Brad Pitt. You're going to see the movie, and it's about Leo and his career, but secretly this movie's really in a lot of ways about the Cliff character, and he's really the hero of the story. And Tarantino seems to know that. And it was a pleasure to watch Brad Pitt in this movie. It was a pleasure for him to be a badass in this movie, to be a man. It was so nice to see a movie where a guy is willing to punch other people in the fucking face and tell people to fuck off. It was just nice to see a character in a movie again that wasn't emasculated. He's a fucking man in this movie. He's a guy you don't fuck with. And we don't get a lot of characters like that anymore. And if we do, a lot of the time they're cartoony, they're not as nuanced as this. So that's the whole thing. One guy is the movie star, but he's actually not that. He's just good at pretending, where the other guy is. But unfortunately, because of this thing going around that he killed his wife, which we don't know if it's true or not. Also, is this Tarantino commenting on the Polanski scandal? I don't know. Or in general, the Me Too movement. I mean, I know he's playing into the Natalie Wood thing. I know it's a little bit about that. But in general, is he talking about how rumors spread around in Hollywood or people get falsely accused or things get exaggerated? I'm not really totally sure. That's why I want to rewatch the movie. I actually think there's a lot to dig in here. This movie is actually kind of bracingly controversial, but because of the tone of it and the way it's paced, I don't think people are initially going to talk about it in that way. But in a lot of ways, this is the themes that he has going on in this movie. What he's saying is some of his most controversial material. So yeah, it's just a buddy movie at the beginning, and I loved it as a buddy movie with these two guys just hanging out and having a great fucking time. and getting along, and you feel that bond, you feel this natural chemistry between the two actors. It's great to finally see Brad and Leo in a movie together. Like, fuck yes. But yeah, for me, this is Brad Pitt's movie. Definitely deserves a supporting actor nomination. Try not to get this coffee mug on the table because it's gonna make a fucking noise. I'll put it on the floor. Hold on. I don't want it to like make a noise on the microphone when it touches the table. Um. So Margot Robbie plays Sharon Tate, who was killed by members of Manson's group, and her, her stomach was cut open, and it was supposed to start a race war, and it had something to do with the White Album and piggies and Helter Skelter. It was just crazy shit. Uh, Margot Robbie's not in this very much, which is what the journalist was asking Tarantino about. She's probably in this movie for like, I don't know. I don't even know if she's in it for 15 fucking minutes, and she hardly has any dialogue. I mean, the standout sequence is when she goes to see a movie that she's in. I think it's called The Working Crew. What the fuck is the name of it? The Wrecking Crew or something. It's got Dean Martin in it. Weird thing in this movie, though, like, there's scenes with Leo where, as his character, he's in these movies that are supposed to look like things shot from that time, especially these Italian films. And then Margot Robbie goes to see this movie, and she's clearly not Sharon Tate in this. And I'm sure they were doing that to respect the family. It's just an odd visual thing. And also the whole long sequence where Rick is on the set of the Cowboy show, where he's playing the bad guy, the heavy, with Timothy Olyphant. With what a stretch Timothy Olyphant has to play a cowboy. It was very I thought it was odd that it was clear it was being looked at from the camera. I know Your Movie Sucks talked about this. I felt the same way, that it was the camera of the show, but the quality looked like the movie, a modern day movie. So it was very odd kind of trying to get into that the way they were. And for me, it made the tone of that a little off, even though I was very much enjoying that. I mean, I like when he's like line and he goes in, but it might have worked better aesthetically to actually make it look like a TV show from the 60s, the late 60s. At least in my opinion. I know for some people it's going to be different. I was just having such a good time. Those little nitpicks, those little problems I was having didn't bother me. I mean, there's a Bruce Lee sequence in this that's awesome and so funny. And you realize then that the movie's kind of a fantasy. It's ridiculous because he throws him into a car and it puts this huge dent in the car. That's one of those cases where the flashback actually works pretty well. When Brad Pitt's thinking back on why he can't get work through this character named Randy, played by Kurt Russell. So dug all that stuff, dug all the stuff with them on the sets, dug all the stuff with Cliff. He keeps driving around. He sees this hippie girl. She keeps waving at him to get a ride. He picks her up. She offers to suck his dick. Then he asks for her ID, which makes him kind of a good dude. And then he goes to the ranch that the Manson family was at for a long time, where you could go and ride horses and so on. So this is Tarantino's one of his standout sequences in this movie. While Rick is on the set of this Western playing the heavy, pretending to be a bad guy, we're then also cutting back to Cliff, who is on this ranch surrounded by women. There's only a few men there, and they used to film Bounty Law at this ranch. And at first, you're not really sure what's going on. You're like, well, why is he going here? But this is the good writing that's in this movie, and this is one of Tarantino's best stretch of writing in a long time, is that you find out Cliff's going there because he's fucking suspicious of what's going on. He's like, why does this girl live there? I know the guy that used to own this place. What's going on? There's all these hippies there. And he goes to confront them about this guy. He's like, is that guy in there? Is he alive? He goes to the house. And they keep saying, oh, he's sleeping right now. Don't bother him. And it's just the way he slowly takes over this sequence, Brad Pitt, and the way that you realize that he was thinking about this the whole time, that he had ulterior motives. And it's exciting. You don't know what's going to happen. It's actually a Western sequence. This is a fucking Western sequence by Tarantino, and it's one of... I prefer this to all the Western sequences in Django. This is like a fucking awesome Western scene, and it feels modern and different. Damn it, is some guy mowing the lawn out there? Jesus Christ. You motherfucker. It's never quiet at this apartment complex. It's never fucking quiet. I haven't had one goddamn day where it's quiet. There's always noise like this. Always. So anyway, this whole cowboy stretch is awesome. He goes out there all looking at him. Lena fucking Dunham's there from Girls. There's a character Tex. He's riding back on the horse to confront Cliff because one of the hippies stabbed his tire and his tire's flat now. And then he just beats the fuck out of this guy. And I didn't know what was going to happen. It feels like anything could happen in this moment. Really standout sequence. The movie's a slow burn for the most part, but then when it does pick up pacing, you don't really realize it. And then the movie in the last like 30 minutes zips by like a motherfucker. I will say Tarantino doesn't know how to use voiceover, and he never has been able to do this well. It doesn't work in Inglourious Bastards. It doesn't work in Django. It didn't work in Kill Bill for me. It was horrible in The Hateful Eight, I think, when he comes in with his voiceover. Once again, here he has Kurt Russell come in and do a voiceover when Rick and Cliff go to Italy to shoot these movies. Doesn't work. Feels completely out of place. Feels like a totally different movie. Did not need it. Did not need the voiceover. I know it was like one of these Hollywood mysteries is what he was kind of going for, but for the technical prowess that Tarantino has and all the acumen he has for all of these aspects of filmmaking, he just can't seem to get voiceover to work. I've never seen him get it to work. I think he should just stop doing it altogether. He leans on it very lazily and forces it into his recent works, and I did not like it here either. I would have preferred to just see a montage or get brief scenes before we get to the final confrontation in the movie. So spoilers. Let's just get that out of the way because there's no way to fucking talk about the ending of this movie without spoiling it. Cliff has a dog the whole movie, and him and the dog are fucking amazing. I'd watch a whole movie with him and this dog. He lives in a fucking trailer out behind a drive-in. He's got a weight bench there that he does bench presses on. He eats, macaroni and cheese. He makes food for his dog out of a can. It's fucking awesome. That stuff is some of the best scenes for me in Tarantino's career. That stuff is so charming and beautiful. And it was just I could have watched a 2-hour movie with that. I mean, literally, that's how I felt. So the payoff for this is that when you start to realize this is a fantasy, that this is an alternate history, and Tarantino feeling bad that a time of movies and being shot on film and movie stars and all that is coming to an end, and he's realizing that, and he's nostalgic for that. So much of his career is based off appreciating these artists that have been forgotten, these guys that were just on a TV show or stunt guys. This is a tribute to them in many ways, but also look at how we're changing now. This movie, opening number 2 to The Lion King. That it is a new world, that we are kind of losing the idea of the movie star and celebrities starting to get skewed, and cinema being the art form of its time like it was in the 20th century. It feels like we're going to new art forms that exist on the internet, and with VR coming around and video games keep getting better and better from a graphic standpoint, what they could do in these worlds that they build. There's a good argument to be made that cinema's not going to be, which I think we probably are already there, that cinema's not the dominant artistic form right now. And Tarantino's sad about that because this guy has such a passion for film. So out of nowhere, the pacing of the film, the urgency of the film picks up so quickly when the Manson family pulls up to Rick's house once he gets back from Italy after he's getting drunk with Cliff all night. Cliff has this acid cigarette that he put up like 6 months ago, and he goes out to smoke it while he takes his dog out for a walk. So he's tripping balls. And I wish the whole movie had this pacing and urgency that this final like 20 minutes does. It's really a shame that the rest of the movie's not as quick and energetic as this, because when it picks up, it fucking picks up. And I wish the whole movie had that feeling to it. It's like, holy shit, where was this? So Leo out in the robe yelling at them to get the fuck off his driveway, these hippies. Them in the car. Once again, Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke's daughter is in this. The chick who played Robin in Stranger Things. She's fucking great. She's just... God, I'm gonna have to go down and kick this guy's fucking ass. Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, she's great. And she runs away because now we're in an alternate universe where they actually don't go to Sharon Tate's house. They go to Rick Dalton's house. Not knowing that these guys are ready to fuck you up. Rick has a flamethrower, and Cliff is a badass who's been kept in a box the whole movie, not releasing his violent tendencies. And the dog is like the sweetest dog in the world. So we're like, what's gonna happen? Also, the hilarity of this is that he's he's on acid. I can't think of a more crowd-pleasing sequence in a recent Hollywood movie for like the last few years. This is one of the most entertaining. I know some people didn't like the ending. I know like Double Toasted just shit on it, Corey and Martin, although I don't agree with them on this one. I would agree with the Hitler thing and Inglourious Basterds because it felt random, and just kind of thrown in, where the whole movie builds up to this alternate history and change here. The whole movie's about this and it being a fairy tale. So I don't really agree with that criticism. I think this works very well, much more so than when he's done something like this in the past. So the sequence is just ridiculous, but they break into the house with knives, a gun. There's an amazing part where Brad Pitt points a finger gun at this guy Tex, and they just both start laughing. That got a huge laugh in my theater. He sicks the dog on the guy. That seeing a dog just attack someone like this in a movie, it's fucking awesome. I haven't seen a dog attack someone this brutal in a movie in years. I mean, it's like, it looks real too. I don't know how the fuck they filmed it. It looks amazing. He throws a fucking can in a girl's face and smashes their face in. And this is a guy that's been accused of killing his wife, and he's brutally killing a girl at the end of this movie. This is Brad Pitt, one of the biggest movie stars in the world, in a huge movie, smashing a girl's face in brutally during the Me Too movement. Only Tarantino could do this. I mean, only Tarantino could do this, and he doesn't give a fuck what anybody thinks. There's something kind of beautiful about that. It's nice to see a movie that has balls. I mean, really, this really turned me around on Tarantino. It's like, thank you. Thank you for doing something like this. So he just brutally kills this girl. The dog's just attacking the other girl. Brad Pitt gets like stabbed in the side. Rick Dalton's just chilling out in his pool like a drunk slob. His wife's hanging out in the bedroom. The wife just punches one chick in the face. The scene gets ridiculous. It's funny and scary at the same time. But it's just so entertaining, and it's beautifully shot. Robert Richardson does phenomenal work in this movie. I much preferred this to PTA's Thomas Pynchon adaptation of, what's the name of that terrible fucking movie? Inherent Vice. Horrible, horrible fucking movie. This is a much better version of that kind of thing where there's comedic elements in this LA setting. And you see some of the same influences, actually, from what they're going with. But then she comes out and she it falls in the pool and she's running around and moving her arms, and it's like a Dario Argento film. It's like a giallo film, like those ridiculous Italian horror films where the characters exaggerate everything. How she's waving her arms and screaming. It's done intentionally. It's very funny. She falls into the pool. Rick has a flamethrower from a movie he shot, this Italian film, and then he actually grabs the flamethrower and just burns this chick in a fucking pool while she's shooting up to the fucking sky. It's insane. It's goddamn insane, but it's also goddamn brilliant. And some people say that's Tarantino going back to his immature, childish ways. It's like, no, if anything, this is an evolution of those ridiculous things that he does. And to me, it goes back to what I like so much, even though he used to have a lot of restraint about some of the ridiculous stuff in Pulp Fiction, like shooting Marvin in the face. Although that stuff feels a little bit more realistic than this by far. The way he depicts violence in this and finds that balance of humor with it is distinctly Tarantino. So that whole ending sequence, it's going to be controversial and it's going to be mixed. And I know some people hate this movie. I know critically this is his best reviewed film in a long time. I think the ending's awesome. I wish the whole movie was like that in a lot of ways. But then there's also, that's a problem. This is like 4 movies. I want the buddy movie. I want the Hollywood movie. I want this Manson movie. And then I also want this ridiculous fairy tale. It's probably overstuffed and a bit of too much. Like, he probably could have separated it a little bit. Like, there's a Hollywood party with Steve McQueen, and he's popping these names up. And there's just stuff like that that didn't mesh with everything else as well as it could have. I would have liked to have seen more of the Hollywood parties and more cameos. And yeah, maybe just more of Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate, because Margot Robbie just lights up the cinema. Of course, her feet are in the frame for a long amount of time, because this is the most foot fetish Tarantino's ever been. But the whole ending is ridiculous, and it ends on this kind of beautiful, sweet note, where Rick gets invited up to Polanski's house to meet Sharon Tate, and walks up the gate. And Emil Hirsch is in this goddamn movie, and then it pops up the title, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and it's like, wouldn't it be great if she had never died, and maybe the whole Polanski thing wouldn't have happened with the 13-year-old girl. and Polanski wouldn't have had to, leave the country because, there is an argument to be made that he is mentally, and where he ended up being with the drug addiction and alcohol came from the fact that his wife and their baby were brutally murdered. And he's also a Holocaust survivor, so there's that. And I'm not defending Roman Polanski's actions. Let me make that fucking clear. I'm not defensive, even though Tarantino on the Howard Stern show was defending them. So, but that's Tarantino. That's not me. I think what Polanski did was egregious and fucking awful. Even if I'm a fan of Repulsion and Rosemary's Baby and all that. But it kind of ends on this note. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't go into the cynicism of the 70s? Like Chinatown's a cynical fucking movie, right? So it's a different world. Is Rick going to be the lead in Chinatown instead of Jack Nicholson? Is that the alternate history we're getting? So it's weird that it ends on a sweet note. It's a sweet movie about I wish I could save Sharon Tate, and this is the magic of movies that I'm able to do this as the filmmaker, as the god of my world, and I wish I could have done this. I wish I could save her. It's really a tribute to her at the end in that way, and a tribute to these people and how things have changed so much, and that he wishes Hollywood deep down wasn't this terrible place, and that he worked for Weinstein while all these awful things were going on. He wished that it could be magical and about just pretend and making art and making people happy. I just wasn't expecting that from him. I thought this was going to be... I honestly thought this was going to be a much more sexual film. I thought this was going to be a much more violent film. I thought this film was going to be more perverse. And it's not. For the most part, it's not. For the majority of the film, it's really not. I mean, like I said, that scene with Leo and the little girl where they're talking about a book, and clearly he sees himself in this book that he's reading. These are really nice, emotional scenes. And the scene where she tells him later, "I loved your acting here," which totally feels like an Oscar clip, the speech he gives. He's just chewing the scenery. It's beautiful. These are scenes that Tarantino's never really done before in any of his other movies. Maybe some of the bromance in Django, but I just love that he's trying different things. This just felt like such a step up for me. So this doesn't go on too long. I think this review is going to be as long as the fucking movie. Leo, loved his performance. Maybe miscast a little bit, but he makes it work. Brad Pitt as Cliff is phenomenal. Cinematography, costume design, set design, it's all there. Soundtrack's nice. I wish he would have stayed on some songs longer. There's these sequences where Cliff's driving and then he'll cut to a song that I love, like The Letter, which, Alex Chilton wrote. And I'm like, oh my God. But then like 10 seconds in, he'll cut to another fucking song, and then he'll cut to another song. It's like, can you just let the song play out and let me hear it because I love this song? Like, he'll do like 6 songs in one scene. And it's like, dude, I get it. You want to fit these in and do these jump cuts, but it would have been nice to just have a scene where a song plays, which he's so good at. And he doesn't really let a sequence play out here with the song, which I think is a detriment to the movie. Once again, too much like two kind of movies clashing with each other. This laid back movie and then this rapid editing or jumping into flashbacks and stuff like that. When the relaxed movie this was, I much preferred. So would have liked that more. Let the songs play out. Let me enjoy the music. Didn't get a lot of that, even though I like all the song choices. Yeah, maybe it slags in the middle a little bit, but I think it picks up. Would have liked more scenes of Cliff and Rick hanging out. Would have liked some more Hollywood party stuff. A little bit less of him filming that Western, the one that Timothy Oliphant's on. I would have liked a little bit less of that. I think that takes up a little bit too much of the movie's time, even though I get why it's in there. And, yeah, cut that narration out with Kurt Russell. Just fucking awful. Did not work. Even though I love Kurt Russell, and I love him when he's in this movie, it feels like he's Stuntman Mike again. Overall, though, just, like, there's so much to read in here. This is a rich film with so much to say about the industry and movies and Tarantino's relationship with it and his memories and adolescence and growing up in Los Angeles. Even though he's not from there originally. I believe he's from Kentucky. Which kind of explains his weird voice. Because it's a little Kentucky and a little California. I gotta say, great movie. Best movie of the year so far. For me, I know some of my subs are gonna hate that because I know some of you didn't like it. I would hope that if you rewatch it, you'll see that this does have a hangout quality where you want to go hang out with Rick and Cliff again. In the same way that Jackie Brown has held up to repeat viewings for me over the years and become one of my favorite films of his. Where I love going back and hanging out with that characters. I think Jackie Brown is a little bit tighter, and this movie's a little looser, because Tarantino unfortunately indulges a lot these days, and there's indulgences here. But when this movie's at its best, and those standout sequences I talked about, it reminds you why you were a fan of him to begin with so much. This goes back to his 90s work more than anything he's made. Because everything post Kill Bill has felt like it's been affected by Kill Bill. And I'm not a fan of the Kill Bill movies at all, actually. I fucking hate Kill Bill Volume 2. I think it's a terrible movie. So it was nice that he kind of had, I don't know, Stella got a groove back. So I just, yeah, it was fun. It was just a fun time at the movies. I had a really good time. My mother came up to visit me and we saw it together. It was I don't know if this, I don't want to call this a mom movie, but that's my family. My family's fucked up. Now my dad took me to go see Species 2 when I was like 7. So that's the family I grew up in. Terrific though. Total surprise. Not the movie I expected from the trailer, not the movie I was expecting him to make, and it's all the better for it. I think people are going to be more divided on this film, mainstream audiences, than the crowd-pleasing Django and Inglourious Basterds, but I think with time, this movie might become more appreciated and be looked at as one of his best films in general, and I think this might be the movie that he actually wins, like, Best Picture, Best Director for, because he doesn't have any competition right now. There's a lot coming out. But this could be the one, and this could be the one Brad Pitt wins an acting Oscar for. We have to wait for the end of the year, but I could see this film being the one that Quentin finally wins director and all that. Because the reviews are there. You know, it's got an 85 on Metacritic, an 84 on Metacritic. That's better than Django and Bastards and Hateful Eight. Really, it's his best reviewed film, I think, since like Kill Bill 2, which I just said I hated. But really, if you look at it overall, I think this is getting some of the best reviews he's gotten since Pulp Fiction. So yeah, I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it yet. I love the visual aesthetics. I love the tone of this movie. Like I said, it's like a Hal Ashby flick at points, and I'm a huge Hal Ashby fan. And I've often said The Last Detail, the Jack Nicholson film directed by Ashby, feels like a Tarantino film. And I think Tarantino in many ways has been trying to make that film his whole career. Has been trying to make The Last Detail. And if you go back and watch that film, you'll see a lot of it in there. Just think about it, and it's in there. And, you know, also David Mamet, and he's, you know, he loves Elmore Leonard and all that. But I think there's a lot of Tarantino in The Last Detail. And one of my favorite movies, by the way. So this was just a total surprise. I'm giving this an 8.5 out of 10. Not quite a 9, but a solid 8.5 out of 10. It's currently my favorite movie of the year. It's definitely going to make my top 10. I think this movie's underrated by a lot of critics. I think a lot of critics actually aren't appreciating how good this is. And I think that people just, they have too much of a bias with Tarantino as a person, as a persona, and as a filmmaker to actually appreciate this. Because if some director made this that wasn't Quentin Tarantino, if this was some first-time director and he made this film, I think everybody would be praising this and calling that guy a genius. But because of Tarantino, I think there's a bias going in and it affects the whole movie, which I'm not saying is even unfair. But I think if another filmmaker had made this, we'd all go, wow, this guy's fucking amazing. And I've been a critic of Tarantino, so I'm not coming in here like as a fanboy. This is good. This is good stuff. And I don't know if he's going to make Star Trek. I don't know what the fuck his next film's going to be, but if it's as good as this movie, he's ending on a high note. And not, you know, fading out, which is what my fear was with his career. And I really liked Hateful Eight, so for me, I'm a Tarantino fan again. He won me back over. And it was just nice to see a movie where he wasn't leaning on Christoph Waltz or Sam Jackson. It was nice that he actually said, hey, Brad Pitt, I need you to come here and be fucking cool. I need you to cry, Leo. I mean, emotional scenes in this movie. And pathos and just camaraderie and friendship and male bonding, but all wrapped up in this package that offers so much. It's funny, it's perverse, it's unique, and sad. And this and Toy Story 4 were both really sad and kind of about growing up and accepting, moving on, and accepting that you're not needed anymore. And the fact that I'm going to be 30 next year, I'm feeling a lot of those feelings. But thank you, Quentin, and reject all the hypotheses that you want, my friend. Because I think you're back, and I think you're back. I think you got a groove again, and I can't wait for his next movie, whatever it is. So thank you for watching. Tell me what you think in the comments. And please rewind your VHS tapes before you bring them back to the goddamn store. Seriously. And I promise you, my video store doesn't have a rape dungeon in it like, like Pulp Fiction. Or does it? Maybe it does.